Hello, this is Caitlin with Sullivan County 4-H Learn by Doing Houseplant Edition. So to start off our series on houseplants, I thought we'd talk about one of the more unique options out there and one of the more space-friendly options out there, and that is aqua plants. Now there are three main breakdowns for aqua plants, and that is a submergent plant like these three here, meaning that the whole plant is submerged in water, including the foliage, sometimes also called true aqua plants. Then the submergent varieties, like this lucky bamboo, where the roots and some of the stalk is under the water, but all of the foliage is on top. And then the third category being the floating category, which, you guessed it, the plant just floats right on top of the water. I don't have an example of one of those here today, but they simply just sit right on top of the water. So, to start off talking about the four types of aqua plants I have here, let's start with the Marimo Moss Ball. Now this actually isn't moss at all. This is a type of algae that grows at the bottom of lakes, and it has this really nice rounded appearance because of the currents at the bottom of the lake that are constantly moving the moss or the algae around, and that tends to give it a nice circular shape. So the care for these are really easy. They tend to like cooler water. Most of the time you can use tap water, but if you have a lot of minerals or metals in your water, you might want to use filtered or distilled water. And they require bright but indirect light. If they get too much sun, they tend to develop little brown spots all over them. And that can be remedied by moving them to a less bright spot, and eventually that old dead growth will go away, so it is reversible. Every so often, in between water changes, you'll want to go by and just kind of roll the ball around like this, and that helps prevent it from getting a flat side. Now, if the moss ball does develop a flat side, it's not going to hurt the plant at all, but you can help with that by moving the water around like this every couple of days, or when you go to change the water, you can simply roll the ball in your hand, kind of like how you roll Play-Doh, and just use a little bit of pressure, and that can help encourage that nice compact rounded shape. So a flat side is really easy to fix on these guys, and you'll want to change the water depending on the size of the container that your moss ball is in, either once a week or once every 2 weeks. Again, you can use tap water if your water doesn't have a lot of minerals or metals in it. And I like to leave just a little bit of old water and then change out the rest. So I usually do about a 90% water change with these. And if you do start to notice when you're changing the water a slight smell, that could be the early signs of a fungal infection or rot. Sometimes you might see little squishy spots that maybe are slightly gray. And how you can help treat that is to increase your water changing. So if you're normally doing it once a week, do it every couple of days, and you can add a tiny bit of salt to the water, and that'll help promote healing with the plant. Now these don't usually require fertilization, but if you want to give it a little extra boost, you can put in a little splash, about a tablespoon of carbonated water, unflavored carbonated water, with your normal water change, and that just gives a little extra boost to the water, and it can help promote healing if you are dealing with an issue with your Marimo Moss Ball, or it can just make the growth even darker. Dark growth is typically healthy growth. The really interesting thing about Marimo Moss Balls is that they can live up to 200 years when taken care of properly. So these are really a plant that don't require a whole lot of care. They don't need a really bright window, and can be displayed in very unique ways, but will last a very long time. The next plant I want to talk about is this banana plant. This is a small banana plant, but why it's called a banana plant is the roots here actually look like a small cluster of bananas. So they're really easy to identify, and the other unique thing about banana plants is you can choose to have them either floating, which they may eventually send roots down to thin roots to anchor themselves to substrate, or you can bury the banana-shaped roots into substrate to keep them anchored. I leave mine free floating because I like the way the roots look, so it's really up to you how you want to display this plant. Now, because this one is in a small container, I'll probably change this water every couple of days. to make sure that it doesn't get too hot for the plant, and to also make sure that it's getting the oxygen change that it needs in the water. But they like to usually have their water temperature about 70 degrees or a little bit cooler than that, so they don't like to be kept too hot. The last true aquatic example I have is this red flame Amazon sword. So this is a really unique variety of the Amazon sword family because it comes in a couple different colors. So on this plant there can be a bright red leaf, a green leaf, or what it's displaying right now, which is kind of a more marbled red and green mixture. And that the color that it is can be associated with how much light it gets. These guys can definitely handle lower lights, but they might be more likely to be green than red. If you really want to try to get red leaves on this plant, you need to increase the amount of bright indirect light that it gets. They still don't want to be in full sun, full direct sun. That can cause burning on the plant. But if you really want the foliage to turn a bright color, that is the best way to do it, is to increase the amount of light that they get. Now this one is planted in substrate, as you can see, and these ones require a little bit more maintenance because they require monthly fertilizing. There's a lot of different ways that you can fertilize it. You can either get Aqua tablets that you can typically find sold in most pet stores that have a fish section, and it's just a little tablet you can crush up and add to the water, or capsule of fertilizer that you put right in the substrate. Typically you would add the fertilizer when you change the water of the plant. The next one we're going to talk about is this lucky bamboo, and again this is a subaquatic because the roots are in water but the rest of the foliage is on top. They also don't like full direct sun. They prefer bright indirect light, and this plant tends to be sensitive to minerals and metals in the water, so the safest bet is to use distilled water with this plant. You don't want the roots to ever fully dry out. That can cause burn on the roots of the plant and also cause the main stem to dry out. If the stem isn't healthy, then the rest of the plant won't be healthy either. So you want to make sure that that stays a nice dark bright green. Now your leaves are also supposed to be dark green, and they can often be the first indication that something maybe isn't right with the plant. So if you notice any burns on the end of the leaf, that might mean that it is in too much sun, or there's a water problem, either a water consistency problem or maybe a mineral harshness in the water. But they are supposed to have lots of deep green growth. If you notice that your bamboo plant is growing really thin and kind of it looks like it has weak growth to it, that means it needs more light. So if it's getting enough light, it'll be nice, healthy, thick, dark green foliage, and if it needs a little bit more light, it'll be really long and thin, straggly, weak looking growth, and if it's getting too much sun, it'll start to get little burn spots on it. So just to recap, most of these plants like bright indirect light and don't like to be in full harsh sun, so your safe bet is to keep them either in a north-facing window or a west-facing window. You'll want to avoid a south-facing window, as that usually has the harsh afternoon sunlight in it. They like to have cooler water temperatures. Some varieties, like this lucky bamboo, specifically like to have distilled water as opposed to tap water, but plants like the red flame can be sensitive to increased levels of copper in tap water, so be sure that you don't have elevated minerals or metals in your water before using it for these plants. They're pretty easy to care for, and when taken care of properly, like this Marimo ball, they can last you a lifetime. They're really fun to display, and you can display them in really unique ways that you can even change with the season, and they can become part of your holiday decor or your seasonal decor. So there's really endless possibilities with these plants. You can keep them in fish tanks, or you can have them displayed individually, or you can make a true underwater garden with them. So keep your mind open with these aqua plants, and the possibilities are endless. For more information about Sullivan County 4-H, please visit the links down below. and be sure to check out Cornell Cooperative Extension's Sullivan County Facebook page. Thank you. See you next time.